Welcome to Sanctuary and welcome to worship. If you are tapping in at 9:30 on Sunday morning, it is not too late to join us for the ice cream portion of Ice Cream Church. Yes, that's happening today at 9:30 at Heidi's Hollow in Hanson. So if you're local and can join us, we would love to see you. And if you are tapping in at another time or later in your week, thank you so much for staying connected. We're so glad that you are here. And as we are all settling into the new feelings of September, next week we are back at Sanctuary in the worship space at 9:30 for worship. And I'm really excited to let you know that Sanctuary Kids is back. So that means during worship, we've got kids time. No need to sign up. Kids from age preschool to 5th grade are welcome to join me for a time in the middle of worship to think about and interact with the gospel up in Ellis Hall together. It's a great time. No need to sign up. Come as you are comfortable doing so, and we will see you there. And with that, welcome to worship. We're glad you are here.
Sadness from wherever you've been. Come broken hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, a sinner come near. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can hear. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can. Lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurts, lay down your hearts, come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless, all those who've strayed. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurts, lay down your hearts, come as you are. There's joy for the morning, oh sinner be still. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your who are broken. Lift up your face, oh wanderer, come home. You're not too far, so lay down your hurts, lay down your hearts, come as you are, come as you are.
Morning. Our gospel this week comes from the 8th chapter of the book of Luke. Jesus spoke to them in a parable. A farmer went out to scatter his seed, and as he was scattering it, some of it fell on the path where it was crushed, and the birds in the sky came and ate it. Other seed fell on rock. As it grew, it dried up because it had no moisture. Other seed fell among the thorny plants. The thorns grew with the plants and choked them. Still other seed landed on good soil. When it grew, it produced 100 times more grain than was scattered. And as he said this, he called out, "Everyone who has ears, pay attention." The seed that fell on the good soil are those who hear the word and commit themselves to it with good and upright hearts. Through their resolve, they bear fruit. The gospel of our Lord. Something I said? There is this time of year an arch nemesis, a rival that pops up in my life, and I, through all efforts to vanquish and conquer it, to banish it from my life, I cannot seem to make a dent. It just comes back again and again and harasses and surrounds me each and every day, reminds me of its presence. I don't know if anyone else has crabgrass this time of year. Now, some of you I know are already like grabbing your phones and texting about your Lyme and your pre-emergence and your miraculous lawn care plans that keep your grass pristine and perfect. But our collective suburban obsession with eliminating weeds like crabgrass, all of our efforts to control and contain, they will always fail, no matter how successful you might feel in the moment. And the reason is one crabgrass plant produces 150,000 seeds in a growing season. And if you mow it, like I do, because it gets long and scraggly, you don't know what else to do, double that. 300,000 seeds from one plant, not to mention my whole yard chock full of it. To put that in perspective, a dandelion, you know, the little like, white globe that you blew into the wind while your neighbor cringed and the seeds floated all over, that's about 200 seeds. Or, thanks to all of our genetically modified things and engineering and ingenuity, we have managed now to get about 110 seeds out of one wheat plant. So when we hear in this parable that Jesus tells that this wheat seed produces 100-fold, this is not an exaggeration. This is not some sort of far out, comically enhanced idea to prove a point. Jesus is actually using something that happens quite often in his dialogue with normal, everyday people. He is using an agricultural metaphor. A boring, predictable agricultural metaphor that would relate to people's lives in a way that they could understand and would just make sense. People just know that this is about the yield you can expect from a wheat plant. I mean, and Jesus uses all sorts of agricultural metaphors. I am the vine, you are the branches. The sower went out to sow. You'll know them by their fruits. I mean, we have all sorts of examples of him using similar kind of language to help people understand what God is cultivating and growing and doing in this world. And it makes sense, right? You have people who tend to grow food because they need to eat it or share it with family and friends, subsistence farmers or gardeners, whatever the case may be. But the people that Jesus is talking to are not just doing this for some sort of, hobby or weekend activity. They grow food because they need to eat it. We get that. Sort of. I mean, we have a garden and we grow things. And we know that if we don't water the tomatoes, that they will not grow to produce any fruit. They'll shrivel up and be thirsty. I mean, we know if we don't fertilize and amend the soil every year that they will be stunted and not produce nearly as much as they could. And we know that if all of those things are an abject failure and we neglect our garden and we have no crops to show for it, we can just go down to Roach Brothers and buy whatever we need. I mean, we don't really have a lot of skin in the game. It's a fun thing. It's a hobby. But what Jesus is describing with this metaphor is not something that's just fun if you have time to do it. This is something that is truly at the heart of survival, at life, at living, is being able to produce and sustain, to cultivate and grow good fruit so that you can live to see another day, so that you have something to share when others need it. I mean, this is something that is very practical and purposeful, this metaphor relating to how we are to be in this world as good soil, receiving God's gift of hope and purpose. That somehow that gift is not something that's just good to indulge if we have the time, but it is core to who we are. We are meant to be good soil in which God's message of unending, inexplicable, unexplainable love is able to take root and produce 100-fold, to impact others in this world in ways that we don't even appreciate and can't even see. I mean, put another way, we have a role to play in the way that God is running full tilt into the ugliness and brokenness that we see all around us in this world. This message, our gospel, this good news that God does not shy away from conflict and chaos, even death itself, in order to remind us, show us, pull us back again to this reality that we are blessed and loved for who we are. Before we even do anything or say anything or can think anything or believe anything, Jesus is willing to give up all so that we might then be good soil, able to produce that same gift of acceptance, of love, of grace towards others in ways that will produce 100-fold. My family owns a 1938 John Deere tractor. My grandfather bought it new for a long time, longer than I thought possible. It still had the original air in the tires. I mean, this tractor is the kind of thing that gets passed down from generation to generation. My dad has now kept it in a little barn out back, and it gets used for the occasional parade or grandkids riding around the block, or maybe you go down to like the power show and you have all the old tractors all sort of lined up. It's a hobby. It's fun to look at. But that's not its purpose. I mean, it was purchased, it was created to till and plant and cultivate and harvest. I mean, this machine doesn't just exist so that it's something fun to pass down to the next generation or to look at or to be a showpiece or a conversation piece. It exists to do something magnificent and beautiful. This one tiny little tractor is able to produce fields full of food that can feed families. I mean, its role, its job is to till and plant and cultivate and harvest. I mean, Jesus uses this metaphor as a reminder to us that all of the moments in which we as faithful people hearing about God's purpose and and presence, God pulling this world closer to a place of justice and welcome, closer to what it is meant to be, where everyone knows that they are blessed and loved because they are made in God's image, not because of the things they do or don't do, but just because they are included and accepted into God's coming world made right, God's coming kingdom. That those things are not just a hobby, something interesting to mull over or wonder about or think about when we have time to get to church or sit down with some other like-minded people and muse and wonder about these things. That we are, in addition to being made exactly who we are made also to be good soil, to be fertile ground in which God's seeds of hope, acceptance, love, this graciousness, willingness to give up all for people who aren't even but a blip on the horizon, that too is something that lies inside of us, that we too are able to receive that and be the same in this world, to be beacons, vehicles of hope for others, of acceptance, of love played out, not in just hypothetical ways, but in practical ways, to remind people of their value and worth, their inclusion in what God is bringing about in this world. I mean, when we are good soil and we hear that those who are poor will be blessed, then certainly inside of us that should cause a cultivation of fruits that help us not just sit in our own relative comfort, but also see the status and the struggles of others and do something about it. To volunteer and contribute, to humanize, to get to know those people that are so easy to ignore or walk past. And when we hear that God is intimately engaged in righting wrongs, in bringing about justice, of helping us see our own hypocrisy and evil and brokenness for what it is, and not just letting us shrug our shoulders and say that's the way the world works, but instead to truly stare it down, to hold up a mirror, and then help us see what else could be, well, surely then that must cultivate in us as Christ's church an ability to look out at the things that are broken and wrong in this world and not just shrug our shoulders, but to call them out. To not just say this is the way it is, but to do something about it. I mean, in the middle of a climate that is so divisive and broken and just so often gross, that we are able again to remind each other that we are, all of us, part of God's beautiful creation, made who we are meant to be, that all of those things that cause us to pigeonhole and push away and divide one another, that they are distractions from this good thing that God is cultivating, a reminder in this world of God's presence, not continuing to push us apart, but to pull us together, to pull us closer to a world made right, where none are left behind, where all are seen for the valuable, beautiful people that they are, just as they are, part of God's diverse gift to this world that is so complicated and interwoven and beautiful for that complexity. We cultivate in our good soil this reminder that Jesus brings, that there are all kinds of people and perspectives and backgrounds and histories, and that God leaves no one out. That God's gathering together of this world is something that we long for and wait for, but yes, we are able to also practice it in small and big ways in our own lives, if only we are able to allow God to use us to grow those connections of understanding, those gifts of forgiveness, those reminders that there are other ways of viewing and seeing and interacting in this world than our own. And that is what we are reminded about in this parable today, that we are not meant to just parade around or grow something if we can, but if not, there'll always be a backup. We are not meant to live in this world with this great gift of God's love and grace in our own lives as then something that we can dabble with or see as a hobby in our day-to-day. Instead, we are called to truly see the purpose behind our lives, our gathering together as a community, our ability to truly grow and produce, bring about incredible reminders and gifts of presence in this world of God's love and justice, gathering together of people who have been separate or judged or pushed away, that we are able to do that work, to be those people, and that we get to do it together. I mean, the thing of the field full of wheat is that there is not one plant. There are an awful lot of them. And occasionally one will not thrive as much as the other, but together, and together there's still a harvest. And we are called, we're reminded that this gathering that we call church is a moment, is a reminder to cultivate our soil together, to help one another be fruitful places from which God's work in this world is able to grow and flourish, live through us in ways that we can only dream of. Can't quite possibly even imagine that we can be true vehicles of God's hope and love for others in ways that are impossible for us to even measure. I mean, may we give thanks that we are part of this beautiful reconciling work that God does in this world. May we together help one another cultivate our good soil so that we can continue to be part of that gracious gathering together of all of God's people that has already begun. Amen.
1, 2, 3, 4.